Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is the energy of emotion. It's often the case that we get overwhelmed by emotion and are actually faced with fear that if we experience our feelings or the depth of these emotions, that we might be consumed by it, that we lose ourselves in it. And so today we're going to talk about how we can interact with that emotion as energy and how that then can free us to release that pent up energy and to experience a greater sense of freedom and expression and flow. So before we get started, let's take a couple minutes to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, and the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you here with us this morning, and welcome to everyone else who's joining us. Today, we're talking about the energy of emotion. In the culture of the U.S., we have a negative judgment of emotionality, right? Like we're pretty repressed, I think, as a culture. You know, we're always trying to defer to the rational, and fortunately, there's a rise in respect for emotional intelligence, and it's become part of a more common conversation. But we still have vestiges of this tradition of degradation around emotion and emotionality. So there's a lot of fear around emotion, especially, and it's not just because of the culture, but just because the power of emotion is so intense that sometimes we're afraid that if we allow ourselves to feel grief, or if we allow ourselves to feel anger, or we allow ourselves to feel the frustration that we feel, that we might get lost in those emotions: sadness, grief, despair, depression. And this conversation is coming from actually multiple sessions from yesterday. It was so fascinating. People had, I don't know if it has to do with where the planets are or what, but people had very intense releases yesterday. And one person in particular had all this emotion arise, and what came up for them is dramatic, profound fear that they were going to lose it, that they were just going to break and be lost in this emotion and not be able to bring themselves back. And what was amazing was that in coaching this person to say, look, it's just energy. It's just energy. Ride the energy, feel the energy, allow it to move in the waves that it comes through, allow its ebbs and flows, experience the energy, watch it move. That they were able to ride this emotion into its deepest depths. And they said it was the deepest, darkest emotion that they ever experienced, that they were terrified. Good morning, good evening, Gia. Welcome. It's so good to have you here with us this morning in the US and evening where you are. And we are talking about the energy of emotion. And so this client they said it was like this incredibly dark energy, like a demon type energy that was so deep within them and so terrifying. And they were, you know how sometimes when you cry, you're so as the tears and the gales of the energy are moving, that it just takes your breath away. And it was that kind of intensity where they were just in the depths of this dark, dark, dark despair. And because I was reminding them that it's energy, to just breathe with it, to allow themselves to move with it, they were able to ride this energy and to allow it to move. And that had been pent up. My heavens, it's been pent up for them probably most of their lives, from the time they were a child, this coming from a deeply dysfunctional family and all kinds of emotional abuses at the very least. To release this energy that had been compressed and condensed and repressed, and to allow it to move. There was such an incredible freedom for them. They were saying it was the most dramatic experience they'd ever had, that they had done rebirthing work and all kinds of other processes, but that this was just profound. And afterwards, they felt incredibly light and free in a way that they hadn't felt, that they hadn't previously experienced. And I understand the fear of emotion. I understand the fear around the intensity of it, having had extreme experiences with depression and rage and all kinds of other emotions, challenging emotions. We recognize the power of that energy. You know, it's like a nuclear reactor within us. And the fear is that it's going to overtake us and consume us, and that we will get lost and never be able to move beyond it. And when we allow ourselves to recognize that emotion is energy, energy in motion. When we allow ourselves to recognize that, then we can dispassionately allow it to release. We don't have to defend against it. We can actually ride it. And it's the resistance to the release of that emotion that helps to cultivate the fear. When we allow ourselves to be the energetic beings that we are, what we can do is allow that congestion to move through, and then there's an open flow of energy. So it releases the channels, I guess, on all different levels to allow us more freedom of flow, of energy, of experience, of emotion. And it's kind of, an analogy might be a hose, like a garden hose that's crimped and nothing can get through, and things back up, right? Because of that crimp in the hose. And then when you let that open, it's gonna sputter and surge. But ultimately, the flow will even out once the water has sort of recalibrated, once the compensation for that pent up energy gets, once it gets to flow, it'll even out. And so we tend to make things mean things, right? The humans are meaning making machines. We make meaning out of everything. And if we can not be judging our emotions, which further complicates or further represses things or further strangles the expression. If we can just allow the emotion to move, if we can connect with it as energy rather than as rage or anger or fear, or if we can just connect with the energy of it, we can allow it to move through, and then it transmutes, it becomes something else. And there's tremendous power in that, because if we as energetic beings allow our energy to be moving through, we're we're going to experience a greater vitality. We're going to experience a greater vibrance and probably more energy. Energy gets so twisted up, like with anxiety. There's such a congestion of energy. And if we can presence ourselves to the energy of that experience, of that emotion, and allow that energy to flow, we can allow it to change. So it's remarkable, the foundational piece of the core connection work is actually just allowing ourselves to be with what's there, to be present to it, rather than denying it or trying to constrain it or trying to control it. If we can allow ourselves to be present to it, to feel the feelings, as frightening as it might be, then those feelings change. Because life is a fluid process. And so when we experience our experience, then that fades away to become something else. It's always transforming, it's always changing. And so just in the act of presencing ourselves to what's there then can release and dissolve and transform. So I invite you, especially with difficult emotions, to allow yourself to experience it and experience it as energy rather than making stories about it, rather than judging yourself for the experience, rather than trying to get rid of it, right? Oftentimes we feel uncomfortable, we feel emotional, we feel sad, and we try to make it go away. We try to pretend it isn't there. It's kind of like with a headache, we take something to make the headache go away, rather than looking at what might be underneath it. What's going on. Maybe the headache is a symptom that's telling you there's something else going on. What happens when we pay attention to those things and listen, to listen to our bodies, our being, to glean information that can move us in the direction of greater awakening and also greater fulfillment, a greater experience of life. So if we're feeling grief, for example, we get to be present to it, be present to the energy of it, allow that to move. I know many people lately who are dealing with loss and have tried to schedule their grief. And what's happened is that it's shown up in other ways, for instance, comfort eating and weight gain and, all of these ways that we avoid and deny our feelings. So Gia says, I have been experiencing this by not adding meaning to my feelings and emotions, especially when I feel anxious. I can witness how I've been adding to my own suffering unconsciously. It's not the emotions, feelings, or circumstances, but it's the meaning that I add to it. Yes, yes, yes. Not easy, but comes with practice and awareness. So thank you for that, Gia. Exactly. It's not, our greatest suffering comes from the meaning that we ascribe to things. If I'm feeling sad, it's like I'll go look for, well, what's the reason that I'm sad? What's the story behind it? And then it's easy to get attached to that story, which leads you deeper down a well rather than just experiencing what it is to experience, what's there to experience. And then it tends to move. If we can say, wow, I'm feeling sad. Well, we have that label that we put on a certain set of feelings. How do we know it's sad? How do we know that pain is pain? We're labeling it. And then if it's pain, then we suffer, right? If we instead allow ourselves to feel the sensations, there can be an exquisiteness about it. I remember, and I've spoken about this a number of times, when I twisted my ankle really badly. And I just sat with it. Must have sat with it for at least 45 minutes. It was excruciating. I could have cracked something. I don't know. But I sat there with the sensation. And, we create a different quality of experience for sensation when we name it pain versus sensation. But it was at moments it got more and more and more intense, and I could call it pain. Um, but it was this exquisite sensation. It was just the intensity of it, and the power of it, the energy of it was so intense that it was almost unbearable. And I allowed myself to just go deeper and deeper and deeper into the sensation. And as I did, what happened was that it went away. I also had an emotional release. Actually, before it went away, what came up was emotion related to my father and the loss of him. And so that came up. There were deep, deep emotion and tears, and the sensation released. So this is a really interesting correlation to be looking at, is physical sensation, physical pain, and grief, for instance, or rage, or whatever the emotion is. But there was this intense correlation between the depth of emotion and the intensity of the physical sensation, and the connection between the two. I've spoken to you about doing energetic work with people with physical manifestations. So I think I spoke about one of my clients last week who had incredible pain in their feet, plantar fasciitis, and it was his feet were burning and extremely painful. And we did some work, and he said that there have been times where there was no pain whatsoever. There's a bone that's maybe broken, that needs to be addressed, but outside of that, the pain was largely gone. And he was also able to recognize the interconnections with other pains and aches in his body as he was compensating for the broken part of his foot. So really interesting. So Rosalind says, do you use EFT in your sessions with your clients? I do not generally. However, I know that EFT, I have used EFT, and it's so powerful. Emotional freedom technique. I really, really recommend EFT as a powerful self-care tool. And in fact, Rosalind, I so appreciate you reminding me, because I have a client that I get to suggest that for, that it'll make a big difference for. And, it's funny how we have all these tools and we don't use them regularly necessarily, and then they fall out of our awareness. So that's a great tool, powerful process. Good morning, Robin. Wow, it's wonderful to have you joining us again. And we hope to have you join us live again soon too. So you're catching the tail end here, which is awesome. We are talking about the energy of emotion, and that really emotion is energy, that really we are energetic beings. And when we can presence ourselves to the reality of that, when we can presence ourselves to the experience of that, miraculous things can change. I'm reminded of a story that my nephew told me when he was a lot younger. This was just so miraculous. When he was younger, I shared a lot of healing stuff and energy healing stuff with him. And, he was so young that he didn't know it couldn't be done, right? So apparently he was at camp, and a friend of his got really badly burned. And so he decided to do energy healing. And his description of it was that he got into the state where he could hear the ants walking on the ground. He could hear the footfall of the ants. And he had this incredible intensity of concentration and presence. And there were other kids there. And right before their eyes, this bubbled up burn healed right before their eyes. And I think he terrified himself and has never done any of that since, which is really, it's so tragic to me. And he doesn't like that I periodically have reminded him of that story. He just can't really be with it. And to me, is just such magic. And it just goes to our power, right? And the power of energy and the fact that we are energy in this physical form. So Rosalind says, instead of saying, I'm sad, replace it with, I'm experiencing feelings of sadness. That's so beautiful, Rosalind. And that's such a profound distinction, to be able to say, I am experiencing sadness, feelings that I call sadness. I am experiencing sensations that I identify as sadness rather than I am sad. Because it's more like I have sadness, right? I have an experience of what I'm calling sadness. Super powerful. Gia says, what worked for me is Byron Katie's meditation, also called the work. There are communities and groups where we all do it together. It's like working on your limiting beliefs and taking it and turning it around and see how you can change your experience. It's amazing. I agree, Gia. I am superficially familiar with Byron Katie's work, amazing work. And it is remarkable how we can transform our experience by being present to it, not by trying to force it into something else, but by actually just experiencing it and being present to it. And Rosalind says it makes low vibration emotions as temporary when we say I'm experiencing versus I am. Powerful, powerful, Rosalind. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Gia, Robin, and everybody else who's joining us. So good to be with you. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living. Tomorrow we'll have a replay, and then I will be back with you on Friday. And I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for the opportunity to have these morning musings, conversations, explorations. And I'm so grateful to you. And until next time, so much love to you.